the science more than anything else.
Well, I hope he believes the science, because the key element here, LA, is that the vast majority of the world is not yet vaccinated. So we have the Delta variant. Now, the Delta variant actually comes. It was started in Europe, okay, and it came here, obviously through some sort of travel situation. The vaccines themselves mutate and they change, and there's a Delta variant. There's going to be probably 4 or 5 more strains of the same, of different types of COVID. So we have to be careful. It's not that we should be isolationists or protectionists, but we absolutely must be careful in the ability to allow people to travel. First of all, in the states themselves, because right now, if you come from 4 or 5 of the states, predominantly in the South, and you're not vaccinated, then you have the potential of causing super spreader things going on in other states. So we really need to. I don't think we should be, again, isolationist, but I do think we should be careful on how we handle. I don't think anybody should be allowed to come to the country who hasn't had vaccination. But the other thing we need to do, because we have the ability to do it, is we need to get with the EU. We need to get with our friends over in the Trans-Pacific area. I mean, look, the Olympics start tomorrow, and there's no fans. And Japan was one of the first countries to do some serious vaccinating, and suddenly, they're having problems. So I think what we need to do is begin to share vaccine and get vaccine to India, Pakistan, and some of these world countries that are suffering badly from the lack of vaccine. So we have to help the world get vaccinated before we start taking the world in here, because we do have run the risk of exacerbating what right now is a problem, but it sure as heck be a whole lot worse.
If you're just joining us, of course, we're talking with Jim Williams here on the Batchelor News Radio Show on IBM TV. Of course, Big Mind Entertainment, WCOM, the Batchelor News Radio Network. Jim, one of the things that the Biden administration's doing is sending more funding for outreach and education, and of course, vaccination into rural areas. Right. And I think that's certainly important if you're in areas where there's a lack of public transportation to get to these places. There's a lack of, even with whether it be a private doctor or a clinic, to have all of that, because they are in these outskirts type of areas, rural West Virginias and stuff.
Right.
But is he also forgetting that in Black and brown communities, there are still people that are not vaccinated, whether it be from the lack of understanding or the fear based on, history, Tuskegee, all that kind of stuff. Is he going away from that area? I know their barbers are doing, having vaccinations at their barbershop. I read a lot of that. A lot of that's going on in the inner city. But is he neglecting the inner city at a point where he should stay there and also try to focus in on those rural areas?
I don't think so. I mean, I know that he meant with a number of the mayors of some of the key cities around the country where there's a large population of both people of color as well as people who came from Hispanics and Latinos and Asian Americans. So I don't think he's gotten away from that. I think he's let that go. He's given the responsibility or allowed the mayors to do what they feel is the best way. Because I mean, each city, this LA as well as I do, each city's different in how they have a makeup and how people respond to, whether it's a barbershop, as you said, maybe it's a church, maybe wherever it might be. I think that they have not taken their eye off that ball, because that's a very important ball to keep floating. The rural areas are tough, not just because of getting the vaccine to it, but because they've been brainwashed that this is not necessarily something good for them. And, there are constant reports of people who are laying there with COVID saying, please, can you give me a vaccination? And the doctors are saying, no, we can't. You've got it. You've got to wait till we get you through this. And hopefully, we'll be able to give it to you. I can give you one other story. This is about young people, okay, of all colors, all right? I had a young reporter who works with me, who called me, and we were getting ready for pro football season, and she said to me, "Is it true that the NFL wants to have all of the people who cover the teams vaccinated?" And I said, "Well, they can't necessarily say we want everybody to be vaccinated, but they are hinting that if you're vaccinated, your chances of becoming, someone who is in behind the ropes as you normally would be allowed to do that." But I said, so she goes, "So that means I have to get a vaccination." I said, "You know what? If the only reason you get a vaccination is so that you can cover Tom Brady, I'm good with that." Okay. Whatever it takes to get you vaccinated, if that's the reason, I'm telling you right now, I'm not letting anybody from my team who covers, sports and politics and everything else, or not just around the country, but around the world. If you're going to cover something, you better damn well, in our situation, have a vaccination, because I do not want you to get sick on my watch. It's not going to happen. Okay. And you're not going to make somebody else sick on my watch. You can look, you have the will to do whatever you want. Okay. I'm not going to preach to you about this. However, if you're under my employment and I'm sending you somewhere, then yeah, I have the right to ask you to do it. I have the right to say, okay, look, you don't have to do it, but you also don't have to cover. You can do something else. I'll put you on a desk. You're not going to be fired. Okay. But you're going to be doing something else, because you're not going to go, because the league doesn't want that to happen. And nobody does. And she's a smart enough young woman to know that I'm not doing this because that I'm pushing the vaccine. I'm doing it because I care about the woman. And I don't want her to be sick.
Well, and it's political correctness. People say, well, it's up to you to decide. But even if you believe it's a hoax and all of these things, either get it for the safety of others or stay away from others. It's got to be one of the two. You can't. If you don't believe it, then you're going to have to take some steps to be in your world. Other than those who, like us, who've been vaccinated. I'm going to come back and ask you some questions about the January 6th committee that Nancy Pelosi's putting together. But I want to go to Mark Lee. I know he may have a question or two to ask you, Jim. Mark.
Hey, Mark. How you doing, Mark?
Mark, we can't hear you.
My mic. I've always got questions. I've always got questions. I've always got things that I am curious about and all of that. And one of the things that I was really curious is a statement that was made out of California, because sometimes politicians surprise me. And I was seeing that Gavin Newsom has made this statement where he is inviting the homeless to come to California, and he's facing a recall. So as one that covers all kinds of news, I'm sitting there going like, what politician in his right mind would sit there and basically invite people to come, knowing that in my mind that could be political suicide? But I just trying to figure out what even the meaning of this would be, and why a politician like Gavin Newsom, who seems to be a fairly astute politician, would invite the homeless to come to his country when they're already having a problem with the homeless there.
I was about to say, Mark, I spoke to Mayor Garcetti in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. And as you probably know, what happened with Mayor Garcetti out in Los Angeles is a lot of the homeless went to Venice Beach and put up tents on Venice Beach. So much so that when the pandemic, when people were allowed to return, outdoors, Venice Beach, you couldn't go to Venice Beach. There was literally a tent city there of homeless. And what Mayor Garcetti did is he got in touch with some realtors and some other people, and they developed relationships, and they basically found some affordable housing where the city actually paid to move the people from Venice Beach to, to an apartment building where they could then live in these apartments rent free until they figured out how to take care of the problem. It's the same way in San Diego. I know that's true. And that's exacerbated because you got the border right there. So you don't only have homeless that are from the San Diego area, you have homeless from people who've migrated up from Mexico. So, and we know it's the same way in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, I, look, I quit trying to figure out what Governor Newsom was doing whenever he got in trouble for going out to the most expensive restaurant I've ever personally been to in my life, without a mask. So I don't know. Look, I have great respect, and we do a lot of work with interfaith groups around here to try to help the homeless. And I would love to be able to make certain that everybody in this country had a roof over their head and a meal, every day. And I appreciate that situation, but I'm not so certain what exactly or what motivation was behind Governor Newsom.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out that motivation, but sometimes just business leaders confuse me as well, because one of the things that really puzzled me recently was this limited boycott that was going on because Baskin, Ben and Jerry's was going on, and I know that Ben and Jerry's is oftentimes involved with activism, and of course they're involved with a number of kinds of activism. But I was sitting there like, if you're going to have a boycott, and I remember that there was the boycotts of various products during the apartheid ages when South Africa was being boycotted. And of course, there's been other historical boycotts that have been very effective. But I don't remember like there being a boycott that just targeted Soweto. But this particular boycott was just on a limited part of Israel. So I was trying to understand the logic behind this.
All right, let me try to help you on this one, Mark. One of my clients is I-24 News in Israel, and I have been up in the wee hours of the morning to be on TV there trying to explain the Ben and Jerry situation, which, by the way, is front page news in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and throughout Israel. Ben and Jerry's, which is now owned by Unilever. Okay, so it's not even owned by Ben and Jerry's anymore.
Okay.
Ben and Jerry's were Jewish people. Okay, and they wanted to make certain that they did not sell their ice cream in the West Bank area and East Jerusalem. And the rationale behind that was because they felt, as many Jews, I'm Jewish myself, feel that you can't get a two-state solution if you're not working with the Palestinians, okay? Now, the Palestinians have had some bad actors running the show, so it's going to be kind of hard to figure out, who's the good people and who's the bad people and who to actually talk to. But, the Palestinians are part of Israel, and they need to be treated properly and fairly. And so this little part of the world, and at the West Bank and basically, East Jerusalem, if you were to tally it up, wouldn't total the population of probably Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh,
Okay, so you're not talking about a big thing, but you're talking about Ben and Jerry's wanted to make a statement, and the statement was, look, we may not be able to save the world, but we feel that we have power over our ice cream to be distributed wherever we wish it to be, and it's all over Israel. If you want to buy Ben and Jerry's, you can buy Ben and Jerry's. You just can't buy it in East Jerusalem, and you just can't buy it in in the West Bank, and that has to do with the settlements back from the 1967 war. And that's become, you've got de Blasio in New York with his very large Jewish population in Brooklyn, and it's suddenly blown up way beyond, what it is. But you want to buy a pint of overpriced Ben and Jerry's Cherry Garcia, which is my personal favorite. You can buy it in Israel, you just can't buy it, in the West Bank. But now it's become a topic of conversation in mainly very Hasidic Jewish areas, which would be Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and some of the more orthodox areas around the country here in the United States. So it became a tempest in the teapot. In this particular case, it became ice cream in a sundae teapot. In the ice cream war, if you will, going on with boycotting Ben and Jerry's. And the funny thing is, as you guys know, Ben and Jerry's is kind of a boutique ice cream. I mean, it's not like it's not like it's not like an ice cream that every time I go to the store I've got to have a Ben and Jerry's. I mean, ice cream. Normally I pick it up, just on a whim, right? It's not that. But man, you would think that they're shutting down every Starbucks in the country.
You're showing your Grateful Dead.
I'm an old man, LA. What can I tell you?
Yeah, that's all right. But I was actually going to tie something in, and then I know LA's back, and he's got all kinds of questions because this is his amazing show and everything. But one of the things that happened is we crowned a champion. It was actually in an area of the world that I went to college at, because Marquette is in Milwaukee, and the Bucks went ahead and won the championship and everything. But what I was going to tie into news, and I kind of agree with them, is that there was like 60,000. I've heard estimates of 65,000 people that were partying in the Deer District outside of the stadium. We're not even talking about in the stadium. And I remember one of the announcers made the comment, and I brought it up on a couple of our shows here on the IBM network, that if Dr. Fauci was watching, and I don't know if he's a sports fan or not, you can actually tell me if he is a sports fan or not, because you've actually probably met the man. But if he is a sports fan, that he was probably cringing as he was watching the game, because there was not any social distancing. Very few people were wearing masks, and y'all were talking about the vaccinations earlier. And definitely that is an example of what could be a super spreader event if ever I saw one, because I did watch and I saw people, the DJs getting the crowd pumped up, food trucks, and a number of other things. It looked like a big festival, and Milwaukee likes a good festival, because I remember when I was there going to one of the oldest festivals in the country, and that was when I was there in the 80s, but it's still going on, and that's Summerfest. So I remember the Summerfest, which is one of the oldest ones in the country.
Love the brats in Milwaukee. Just to your point on Dr. Fauci, you're very apt to see him at Nationals Park because he's a big baseball fan. You also could see him over watching the Wizards over at Capital One Center or the Capitals. So yeah, he's a big sports fan. As a matter of fact, if you looked during his testimony on the Hill, he and Rand Paul had a Ali Frazier fight this past week. But anyway, if you look at Tony Fauci when he's testifying, when he used to wear the mask, it was the mask he would wear often was a Nationals. It had the Washington Nationals World Series mask on. So yeah, he actually got to throw out the first pitch at the Nationals season opener, which to use a phrase from my buddy from Milwaukee, the great Bob Uecker, just a little bit outside. It's like the Bull Durham shot where he'd hit the mascot if there was a mascot there. So clearly he picked the right field to stay in was medicine, because baseball, he's a good fan, but he really can't hit that mitt to save his life.
Yeah, I did know that read that he is a big baseball fan, and looks like I would have thought. Well, anyway, I was going to say Yankees, but anyway, I'm a big Yankees.
Well, he grew up in Brooklyn, so he was
right. That's what I was going to say. I would have thought he might have been, Brooklyn. He's not Queens or the Bronx, but so he could have been the Yankees. He could have been the Mets. We don't know, but
if you know New York, which you guys do, the moment he opens his mouth, he's a Brooklyn guy.
Yeah, that is true.
Listen, from one Italian to another, and Nancy Pelosi, Jim, this thing with this committee, this January 6th insurrection committee,
right?
Really, it's to me at this point, what are you going to do? I mean, Pelosi's thinking about putting Adam Kinzinger on the committee. Of course, he is from Chicago. He came out against the president and talking about impeachment. So he would join Liz Cheney, of course, daughter of
Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney, Vice President Dick Cheney, from Wyoming on this committee. But look, to me, Jim, this has been a fiasco. This is what I have concerns about and problems with the Democrats. This thing should have been put together a long time ago. Why are they dragging their feet on this, number one? Well, number two, what do you think you're going to get out of this if 99.999% of the Republicans in office who won't even acknowledge the vaccination until just now and needing it and all of that and still won't acknowledge the misinformation out there about that they won't even admit that Trump caused a lot of this stuff, and I'm surprised I even said his name on the show, and all of this took place on January 6th where the majority of these people who want to say that they're taking back their country, that the majority of them didn't look like Mark and I, right? That had a problem.
They look like me, I guess. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, the great ones like yourself. But why now, and why dragging the feet on this? Get it done. We know what happened. Get it done.
In March, you may recall, Pelosi offered the opportunity. She said there would be a January 6th commission. At the time, Kevin McCarthy, who was minority leader, as you said, sent 2 negotiators to meet with Pelosi. Pelosi designated 2 of her Democrats to put together. They created a panel. The panel was 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans. Both sides had veto power. Both sides had subpoena power. It was like a 9/11 committee, although a 9/11 committee, the 9/11 committee that was paneled at the time was not. It was a select committee. It had nothing to do with. They were out of politics, in other words. But these are just our Congress people, members of Congress. So both sides had veto power. Both sides had subpoena power. Both sides had exactly the same amount of members, 6. And so suddenly when this came back and it was like, wait a minute, they're being fair? They're giving us this? Suddenly Kevin McCarthy went and turned totally around and said, no, that's not enough. It's like, wait a minute, not enough. What more do you want? You got equal representation. You got equal ability to subpoena anybody. You got equal ability to veto anything. So what exactly where is fair not here? So when that started to ravel, okay, it was decided that, okay, we've got to put together, a panel. Well, the panel then became 7-5, right? To the Democrats. Well, now the Republicans are screaming, well, it's not fair. Well, excuse me. You had the opportunity to do fair, but you didn't want it. So my problem with this is that the Democrats, both in the House and the Senate, for whatever reason, and we'll use a sports analogy, okay? They're not Mike Tyson, okay? When they go in the ring, I don't know who they are, but they are not punching anybody in the face. I guarantee you, 100%. What did when the Republicans were in charge of the House, right? How many Benghazi
hearings?
5 different committees.
Right.
Forget the hearings. We had 5 different committees, all looking at Benghazi. Every one of them came up with zip on Hillary.
Wow.
Okay.
So you're going to my point, Jim. The fact is that why won't they just say the heck with the Republicans? They're not going to just do it. Just like in everything else, just do it. They're not going to work with you. Just move forward. Have the committee. It's all Democrat.
This is bait and switch. Okay. They're saying, oh, well, wait a minute. No. We'll work with you. And then you go back and go, wait a minute. 6 and 6, you got what you wanted and you wouldn't work with us. So you've got to be at one point, you got to realize these people are never working with you. Okay. It's like the filibuster. Okay. When Harry Reid who was as cutthroat as Mitch McConnell,
Yeah, he was.
ran the show. He realized, wait a minute, they're blocking all of our, lower court appointees during the Obama administration. So what did Harry Reid do? He did something that the Republicans fainted, okay? He carved out, because you can do this as the leader of the Senate, majority leader, he can carve out a workaround, the filibuster. He carved out a workaround and said, okay, 51 is what we need. So boom, suddenly Obama judges are getting, the lower court judges are getting flying through.
Speaking about a workaround.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Doing the flips, do the flip, right? McConnell takes charge. What does he do? He carves yet another workaround for the Supreme Court. So suddenly you don't need 60 votes to get the Supreme Court done. You need 51. That's all you need. Okay. They flew that through. So suddenly here we are, fast forward, where you've got two things. You've got an infrastructure bill. You've got voter rights bills, right? Got all that going on. Yet we want to save the filibuster. It's like, fine, save the filibuster. You can still do a workaround because that's legit. That's legal. There's nothing says, there's literally nothing in the Constitution that says there has to be a filibuster. Nothing. Okay. And the filibuster over the years has changed. Sometimes it was 60, sometimes 55, sometimes it was 70. It just depended. Okay. So it's a work in progress. There's nothing says that you have to do this at all. But if you want to do a workaround, workarounds can be done. If you wanted to do, and I think the smartest thing to do for the Democrats would be to do reconciliation, which is a budgetary, numbers deal on infrastructure, because that's all money. Okay. But if you want to do a voting rights bill, which isn't money, okay, that's more of a social aspect. Do the workaround. It's the same as a judge, right?
Yeah.
The judges have nothing to do money-wise with anything, okay? But they have to do with social justice. So if you want a social justice thing, fine. Do the workaround for social justice. Do the infrastructure bill for money. And the reason I say for money is because that's where you can negotiate your way to get yourself past the mansion and cinema and some of the centrist Democrats, where it doesn't have to be $7 billion, it could be $4 billion, it could be $5 billion. At this point, a trillion. I'm sorry, 1 trillion, 2 trillion. After a while, it adds up. So you figure out what you can get through, and you get it through. So you work around that, but you work around it with Democrats, not with Republicans, because they're not this fantasy that people have. The Republicans are going to work with the Democrats on anything. Whether it's in the House.
And what happened to the pork that goes into these bills? Yeah, I'll sign it, but you got to give me this. And I don't understand why they're not negotiating along those lines.
My favorite way of doing it. They still could do that. Okay, Biden could call them to the White House and say, "Look, cinema, you need this, this, and this in the state of Arizona. Biden, you need this, this, and look. When the late Senator Byrd was in there. West Virginia got more money for highways than there's actually state room to build highways in the state of West Virginia. Okay, but there was when Byrd wanted something. I mean, when they needed Byrd's vote, right? Byrd was there 100%, but Byrd needed something. He always wanted something, and he always got it because Byrd could deliver West Virginia, but Byrd also had power over a couple of other senators who were like-minded as him, so he could pull with him maybe 3 or 4 other Democrats that would get him across the line. So they knew if we need Byrd, we're gonna have to give him something. We don't know what it is yet, but we know it ain't gonna come. It ain't gonna come for free.
Yeah, hey, Jim, along those same lines.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jim, along those same lines. One thing I was curious about was, do you think that maybe Biden was setting up one of those end arounds or one of those kind of things that you were describing with the way he described the economy? Because he talked about the economy. He's basically couching us as to be prepared for inflation, to be prepared for higher prices. And there is a big move even in social media for that fourth stimulus. So I'm trying to figure out if we're going to get that or if that's going to be tied into the infrastructure. Because I know that there was a whole lot of people that were signing that change.org petition to get the fourth stimulus and things along those lines. And it seemed to me that in what I saw of that conference yesterday, the chat that he was having and everything, that he was basically saying that yes, the pandemic is still here, and yes, most of your economies are not doing all of that great. So maybe he was trying to set up one of those end arounds, but I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you have a global pandemic, and we are a global economy,
Right.
There's a supply chain problem, okay? And so supply and demand, can't necessarily be met. So, look, Larry Kudlow, and this is someone who I very seldom quote, who was Trump's guy in working the numbers and handling the aspects of the economy and how that was going to work. Larry Kudlow himself, in the fall of 2020, said when they asked him about, when the economy comes back on the other side, is it going to be a robust economy? And he goes, well, it's going to be a gradual economy. We're going to come back strong, but there's no way you can get around this without inflation because, if you've got China, if you've got Japan, if you've got the EU, any number of places where we do business and supply chains flow, then it's going to be, it's going to take a while because, as we know, whether America, the United States is suddenly getting back on its feet and starting to prosper, we need to have that supply chain that works flowingly to make things like electronics and automobiles and all that sort of thing. I mean, look at just what happened in the past month with used cars, right? People are getting almost what they paid for when the car was new for some of these used cars. And why is that? Well, that's because the new cars and the used cars that we normally would get, say, from Canada or, from even from North America, the supply chains aren't flowing like they would. And there's a lot of the parts that are made for U.S. cars are made in Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Engines and drivetrains and all kinds of stuff. And so is the aftermarket stuff. So anything having to do with electronics, automotives, pretty much anything other than the food supply, and even that's a problem to some extent. It's going to take a while, and yeah, there's going to be inflation. Kudlow said it from the Trump side, and I know that the president is trying to soften the blow, but I mean, you don't have to have a degree in economics to figure that one out.
Yeah, and I had to switch printers just at a lower level. I had to switch printers because some of the parts I needed for my other printer was in China, and their Canon is not bringing it. There's no availability for it here.
Right.
Because of that. And then when you look at inflation's here, and I really think it's sucky that these businesses are ready to jump on it. Sure, you want to pay somebody from $10 an hour to 15, but the car prices are going up, housing prices are going up. So it's not, they're not allowing us to have an opportunity to really enjoy the raises in terms of pay raises and salaries that a lot of these businesses are giving to workers. One last thing here, Jim, before you go, I want to go back to Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party. And listen, Mitch McConnell made a quote. If I could pull this quote up, he said, quote, he's perplexed why so many people in the country still aren't vaccinated. But it's his party that's pushing this lie, this misinformation.
Right.
So again, when you look at that scenario, when you look at the climate of whether you should get vaccinated or not, and it's really surprising to me, maybe not to you or Mark, that people are still really kind of debating this thing, but they are, and it's because of them. So what can a Biden administration and the House and the Senate, Democrats who believe in this, you see them with the mask, they got vaccinated, we know that, what can they do to combat this at this point in time when these Senate Minority Leader and Mitch McConnell is saying, "I'm perplexed," yet your party, your party is pushing, "I don't need a mask, vaccination, the hoax, all that," especially with those that are on the outskirts of the Republican Party in terms of extremists. What can they do to really help the Biden administration specifically, especially at a time where he's pouring a ton of money into these rural areas? You said it yourself.
Yeah.
They don't believe it because they were Trump supporters and all this other stuff, and they may not be dying from it, but they're getting the illness because of not wearing the mask or being exposed to someone who's not wearing the mask.
Right. And they're getting the Delta variant of it, very quickly. I wish I could say that it's easy, but it's not, because if you get your news from Fox News or Newsmax or OAN, a lot of people get their news from Facebook. They're in that ecosystem where they're only reading and only listening to people that they feel is telling them the truth. If conservative radio and conservative media is pumping this, alternate reality to them, that's a problem. You just had at CPAC about a week ago, when former President Trump suddenly, who got the vaccine along with his wife.
And let people know what CPAC is, just for our
audience. It's a conservative action group. It's the deepest red of the red. It's the red meat of the party.
Right.
And but from that bubbles out, to the people around the country. Anyway, at CPAC, suddenly the president, who was trying to take every bit of credit that he could for Operation Warp Speed to get these vaccines to market, all of a sudden he's relenting and saying, well, maybe you can't trust this vaccine that the Biden administration is putting out there. And suddenly that was out of left field. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, look, fine, I get the fact that you're screaming about that you didn't lose the election, which you did, but okay, fine. But if 40% of the people in that world do not believe Joe Biden actually was elected president, and believe that the deep state, which is anything, I guess, that has to do with the government,
anything that they did have a part in winning, apparently, as the deep state.
Right.
They did have a part in winning.
Anybody who didn't tilt the scale in their direction.
Right.
I'm afraid those people are not going to. There's nothing you're going to do, or I'm going to do, or the president of the United States is going to do to make them do something, because they're dead set against it. And the fact that conservative talk radio, Breitbart, all of these different echo chambers on the right are pumping this out, it's a pox on their house, right? They are benefiting. They're making money off the fact that these people, they don't care if these people are going to die or live. They don't give a damn. They give a damn about the bottom line. And at the end of the day, maybe they trust their local doctor. Maybe their local doctor can sit them down and say this. But as I said, 10, 15 minutes ago, when you have doctors sit there and you have people saying, I didn't think this was that bad. And they're on, theoretically, in some cases, actually their deathbed, saying, I didn't think it was that bad. Well, guess what? It is.
It's that bad.
Whether or not you love it, hate it, whatever, the fact of the matter is, it will find you. It will find you whether you're a Democrat, or it will find you whether you're Republican, it will find you whether you're old, whether you're young, whatever. It will find you.
And Mark, I mean, and Jim, the scary part is that I haven't talked to any doctors, but I have talked to some nurses that said that, the COVID thing is blown out of proportion. They're nurses. I mean, they're a step below the doctors. So if they're saying that and they're believing that, and I can't, I'm not a nurse, so I can't debate it there. That's a concern. That's a concern. Because
LA, and this is actually coming to something that I was going to add as well, because at some point, people just have to understand reality and understand that there are certain things that are just real, whether we're talking about the pandemic. And I definitely have known some nurses and doctors that have tried to spread that misinformation as well. But at the same time, you got some people that are hearing statistics that are plain as day. One of the number one things that we all depend on is our phones. And everybody has said that we're having a shortage of just the part of the phone that controls the data and everything. And people are trying to deny that that's happening, because
Right.
that's just a known fact that, the part of the phone that you have to put in to control your data, there's a shortage of those out there. And people are not even acknowledging that. And they're like, nah, my phone's all right, even though there is a plain fact that there's a shortage there. And that comes back to the economics.
Mark, I'll tell you what. In this particular case, I'm going to quote someone who we all hold in high esteem and great respect, and that's the former Grambling coach Eddie Robinson.
Okay.
And Coach Robinson was asked one time if there was any problem. I mean, if there was one thing he couldn't teach somebody to do. And he quickly, thought for a moment and responded, "I can't teach stupid." And basically, it sounds simple, right?
Go ahead.
But I think, they're probably etched on the tombstones of some of these poor people. Should be, "I can't teach stupid."
Right.
If you are given all the information, all the data, and it's right there in front of your face, and your doctor's saying, "Buddy, I realize that you're against this, but, if you get this disease, trust me, it's going to be a whole lot worse than what you think the government is doing to you." Everybody has a come to Jesus moment. And I think, unfortunately, and this is the sad part, for a lot of these people, that comes and it's way too late.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that the government's going to be able to do to change this, because if you can't make 40%, as I said, 40% of a group of people even acknowledge that the person who's trying to get you to do this is in charge, well, I can't teach stupid.
Yeah, we got to run. The only thing I would say too to you guys is the fact that, I say this all the time, and someone, one of my mentors used to say that God gave you common sense, use it. I mean,
Right.
You don't have to be you don't have to have all those letters and be, after your name, the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of you're a scholar and this, that, and the other thing. You got common sense, use it. Just use common sense. That just it breaks down everything else other
Right.
than all of this stuff. And again, I go back to the fact that even if you don't believe it, right, be responsible. Other people believe it. I don't want you coughing on me. I don't want you doing those things. If you don't believe it, then you stay in your isolated area, and it'll be what it's going to be, Mark and Jim. And so I don't think that people, we get into these type of situations with the pandemic and the other virus, and now they're talking about the variant, that we are not concerned about each other. We have this crab in a barrel mentality as humans. It's, I got mine, you get yours. That's not my problem. Somebody else will take care of it. That type of thing. Till we kind of come together in all groups, it'll always kind of be like that. And then you have the birth of a Donald Trump, who, by the way, I don't always say this just for shock value, has the same birthday as mine, which is really scary. You have a Trump that comes along that is the birth of what a lot of conservatives and extremists have been putting forward for so long. The difference is, Jim, and you and I, we've known each other for years. I keep telling you all the time, you keep agreeing. One side is playing checkers, the other one's playing chess. The Democrats need to just go, like Bush said, we are going to Iraq. I'm the president, you're not. We're doing it. So I don't care what you say, I'm the president. We're going. They have to be able to have that position and take that mentality. They can't look at numbers. They got to go and say, there's a January 6th committee. We invited you Republicans. You don't want it? Fine. There is a a bill on the table in terms of infrastructure. You don't want to do it. We're going to do a reconciliation. There's a George Floyd bill. There's a voters' right bill. We just need to keep it moving. If they don't do that, then not only they won't be empowered, but they'll lose a lot of credibility from some of their base as well.
Right. The other thing too, and just to put a button on it, is that, you know, when the Democrats were screaming about Mitch McConnell and his blocking of, you know, his jamming these, first he held Merrick Garland out, and then he jammed these 3 judges through. What did he say? He said, votes matter. The person who's in charge has the votes. Okay. If the Democrats, you know, this is unfortunate. This is a Game of Thrones, folks. This is not, we're not playing patty cake here. Okay. I often wish, frankly, that Nancy Pelosi was the majority leader of the Senate and not the House, because
Good point. Yeah.
she would have torched this. Okay. She would have said, screw it. This is what McConnell would do. You know, he wouldn't think twice about this. So you know what? Filibuster, hello. We're doing some carve arounds. And you, Manchin, if you want to ever get elected again, then, you know, the reason, you know, that Nancy, you know, is in trouble or upset is because she realizes that in the 2020 election, there's a lot of state houses that they lost. And that meant the governors can change, you know, and legislatures can change. And I asked Charlie Crist, who's a
Democrat now.
He's a Democrat. Yeah, he's Democrat, independent, whatever. But at least he's a Democrat at this point. Why he was running for governor again? And he said, "I'm running for governor again because they're going to my district's going to be gone. They're going to redistrict my district. My district will be gone."
Wow.
So okay, so he loses because he doesn't even have a chance to run in an election because the district he used to be in will not exist as of September of this year.
Thanks to the state legislators changing that, those Republican state, right.
Hey, LA, I know we're getting ready to wrap up and everything. I was actually going to ask Jim, because there are people that are watching that don't know Mr. Williams. Glad that he's been able to come back for another time. And I know he's a regular here now, but, you know, we always love to give people a chance to be found. So, Jim, where can folks find you on the internet if they're watching now, if they're watching it, what my friend Brian calls on his live streams, Team Replay?
Okay, well, Team Replay is great. You can find me in my den, but if you can't find me there, I would suggest easiest way is to find me on Twitter, because everything's there, and that's JW Media DC on Twitter, and it's easy. And you can also, Instagram is Jim Williams 200. So those are the 2 places that I post a lot of stuff, all the articles, all the places where we're going to be, involved in any sort of media. It's there, and I have to check it myself to find out what I'm doing. So I would suggest that you check that out. Greatly appreciate the ability to do a shameless plug. It's always appreciated. But
hey, I'm going to tell us about the LA as well, because LA, you've got Trump as your birthday person, and I was just remembering who mine were. I've got a couple of them, and some of them are infamous, but I've got Princess Diana and the great, and I'm being somewhat sarcastic, rapper Missy Elliott. So they are on the July 1st crew and everything. But that being said, what do we have coming?
I got Ron Howard. I have Ron Howard and Willie Mays.
Well, okay. My God. Okay, you get Ron Howard, Willie Mays. I get Donald Trump. Wow.
I'm sorry.
Jeez.
It's the way things go. Hey, LA, what we got this evening? I was actually thinking that maybe the next time Jim comes on, we can talk about it, about the ways that Latin American countries are portrayed differently, whether it's Haiti or whether it's Cuba or the different other parts of the whole Latin American reign of countries, because there's a lot of countries in Latin America, and they've been definitely in the news, whether it's been Mexico, Cuba, or
don't forget African countries as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would say it's funny because Jim will be on with us on our 6 o'clock show, and we'll talk about that. And the uniqueness of Jim is that he can talk sports, and being in DC and Florida, and so he can talk sports and politics. So we'll tap into a lot of the the political stuff we talked about, and certainly we're going to talk and get his thoughts on your Milwaukee. But well, I know you're a Sixer fan, but Marquette, Milwaukee, that area there where Giannis won and getting the monkey off his back, and talk about that. We're also going to talk about the NFL training camps are going to be starting up, and recap the NBA finals. A lot of moving around of coaches, and actually at this point in the NBA, real quick, the NBA has been at the forefront in terms of hiring African Americans as coaches. They're at an all-time high now. They're even higher now. So we're going to talk about that. And
don't forget the Buccaneers too, because the Buccaneers have more minorities in their coaching ranks, which include 2 women.
Right. Well,
and there's actually a young lady that is one of the owners of the Milwaukee Bucks. So we saw the 3 primary person, but there is a sister that is an owner as well of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Right.
That's right. Well, I can't plug Tampa because they got Tom Brady. But anyway, so
wait a minute. He took a nice shot at former President Trump, or in his short speech that he had, where he said that he forgot one play in 21 years, and they called him Sleepy Tom. Then he goes, and the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl, and 40% of the NFL fans don't believe it. So
well, he did. Now he is a Republican though, but anyway, I'll give him that one for the moment.
Okay, well, guys, it's been fun, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Jim. We appreciate you, man.
Okay,
take care. Get on out of here. Hey, and I'm gonna do the 30-second clock that also is the 30-second ending until we get a video for the beginning and the ending, and we're working on that. But that being said, LA, when you get them on the radio side, y'all are also gonna have to talk about what's becoming the generational divide in the Democratic Party, because I'm seeing that some of the people that are in the AOC camp are going and campaigning for other people that the establishment candidates don't want, and we're seeing that in Ohio and in other states as well. Sure. So there seems to be some generational divides going on as well, just within the Democratic Party.
Sure, and you look at with Congressman Clyburn, who's endorsing the other candidate in Ohio. It's sort of more of a traditional Democrat as opposed to sister girl, I can't think of her name, who's more of a progressive who worked with Bernie Sanders, but you know what I'm talking about, Jim. Yeah. Right. So that is interesting, and that's been there, Mark. It's been there. It's just kind of coming to fruition now that a lot of these people that are younger who are believing in the type of protest and the kind of you're not going to call me the N-word type of people, as opposed to the Clyburns who are the Biden Clinton type of regime.
So I think the best way to explain would be they're corporate Democrats.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, which is not. Look, some of these guys to run and get elected in their areas, it has to work for them that way. Some other areas, there's room for progressives in there, and whether or not they get to that point, a lot of times they don't, and it's because the corporate money is flowing in a different direction.
Well, you got to bust the doors open. I think. I mean, I'm a man in my 50s, but I believe and trust in these young folks, because we were their age. We didn't want to be told what to do. We believed in what we wanted, and we fought for it. So allow them to do the same thing. They're going to make mistakes. They should consult, but allow them to be who they are. We were the same way. We had the fads and everything else. So, I would say that allow them to be who they are. I love AOC because she's going to keep it real. You may not always agree with her, but she's going to speak her mind.
Right.
And listen, we had a guy for 4 years who spoke his mind, and the mainstream media loved him. Oh, he's just being Donald. No, bump that. So if he can be Donald, then we all should be able to be who we are as well.
No doubt about that. And I know we're going to
Guys,
wrap
I'm
everything.
I'm getting the 5-second call here. So
All right, yeah, we're
you,
getting
Jim.
ready to get out of here anyways, but I was just going to say
take
we
care.
definitely can relate to those generational things because I was actually on a couple of other shows and we were talking about cross colors and the band Crisscross. So that's something that I'm even LA can relate to. But when you mention it to the young folks, they're going like, I don't know what a cross colors is, but the folks that are in their 50s and their 60s definitely know about the cross color fashion and they definitely know about crisscross jump. So some of the young folks learn from us as well. So on
That's
that note,
right.
here's the 30-second clock.
Take care. Have a nice one.
Thanks.